Hey, what's up? It's Emilio DiSpirito, and this is the Wealth Architect Podcast. I'm so excited to be here with you each and every single week. My team and I have hand-selected our guests to come on the program to talk about how to build wealth financially, mentally, physically, spiritually, right? There's so much that goes into building a lifestyle full of wealth, and we hope that this content really reaches you, not only in your brain, but in your heart, and that you could do something with this. So thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you, and we're going to have a great show. If you're listening to this podcast, you either own or will own a home, a car, and need life insurance. That's why you should check out our friends over at LaPointe Insurance, LaPointeINS.com. These guys are the best in the business. They can help you if you're in Rhode Island or Massachusetts. And let me tell you something, his dedicated team of professionals are there to assist you and meet you where you're at. You never feel like you're being sold. You felt like you're being helped. It's a family tradition over at LaPointe. Check them out, LaPointe Insurance. Hey, a special thank you to our sponsor, Annie Mac Home Mortgage, whose Cash to Keys product is disrupting the industry. Sick and tired of finding the perfect home, not having your offer selected? I got to tell you, it happens all the time. With Cash to Keys, Annie Mac gives sellers a cash guarantee for each of their buyers' offers. Stop bidding and hoping. Instead, bid with Annie Mac and bid with confidence. Don't just bid, but win. Annie Mac Mortgage. Episode 14 of The Wealth Architect. My name is Emilio DiSpirito, and I'm excited to have you here today with us. We've got a great guest in the studio. It's none other than Amelie Hennessy of the Hennessy Property Management Group. And if you want to learn about leadership and scaling businesses, I mean, you got to learn from certain people, and she definitely is one of them. So she runs Hennessy Group, which is a property management company, I'm sure along other things too, we're going to find out. And she manages over 5,000 doors, owns over 400 doors herself, and leads a 40-person company, a team with discipline and clarity. Okay, so that's no easy feat. And she is a superpower because combining project management mastery and emotional intelligence, she really grew and is growing an empire of like nothing else we've seen here in our region, which is fantastic. So from the ground up. So whether you manage one door or thousands of doors, you're going to get a lot out of today's segment. So I'm excited to welcome you, Amelie, to the Wealth Architect.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Glad to have you here. I've loved watching your company grow and blow up over the past several years. And I mean, there's so much that goes into running a company and doing that. And now that you manage over 5,000 doors and own 400 plus rental units yourself, what systems or framework allowed you to scale to that size?
Having good people.
Mm-hmm.
When we started in property management, we started simply by owning property, being landlords, my partner and I. And I think what is really important and what has served me personally is that I have done every step of every position along the way within property management, within owning rental properties. So I started out collecting the rents, doing the accounting. I've cleaned apartments. I've done some maintenance. I've done everything. And so I have a good understanding of what everybody in the company's roles are and functions. It doesn't make me necessarily the best, teacher and manager at all times, but I can understand exactly what everybody, has to do and has to go through in certain positions. And so over time, getting people to just, take on those roles and positions and trusting them. And that's been hard, right? When you start doing everything on your own, giving up that control and putting it in somebody else's hands is difficult. But
very tough
you get to a point where there's just so much work, you have to let it go. And for me, once I was able to get the right people in the right places and I can let go of managing certain things, it's allowed me to then get into bigger things, bigger ideas, and scale that way.
And it's like once you grow that team and you realize that these people are so much better at this area than I am, it allows you to focus really, like you said, on what you love, what you're passionate about in your company. I would imagine that's how you scale, right? You put the right people in the right places. But I love what you said, Amelie, about how you were doing their jobs so that you know like what your people are going through, like you know their pain points, and you can definitely empathize with them. And I think that's like such a great leadership skill. And I find that so many people they run into business and they just want to like speed, they just want to rush through everything. And I find that, you know, people drop the ball if they don't pay attention to those details.
Absolutely. And again, if your foundation and your people and your systems are not solid, you have nothing. And so to rush and to cut corners, you know, to grow, to me, you know, doesn't make any sense. And especially we had an acquisition 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, actually, of 2 management companies. And I really spent the first 2 years solidifying what those 3 companies had and making sure everything was working. And once we felt like that foundation was solid, then we went after more accounts and made it bigger. Because to just add more weight, try to get more clients, try to get more accounts on something that's not foundationally solid doesn't work.
So let's talk about that. So you merged 3 companies together, which is no small feat. I mean, how many people did you add, and how many doors did you add together when you merged all 3 of those companies?
We started with Hennessy Property Management, which is the management company that I started. There were, I want to say, 3.5 people.
3.5 people.
3.5 people.
Were you all 3.5 people?
I was
You and
2.5,
Josh?
and I had 1 helper.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
And we acquired another, it was the largest condo management company in the state at the time. They probably had about 25 employees, maybe 3,500, 4,000 doors. So we went after the biggest one. And then during that time, we also acquired another management company that I believe had maybe 1,000 doors, and we took 1 employee from there.
Okay.
So
Wow.
we were the smaller one, and we kind of took over the bigger one. So that's how we combined the 3 companies,
Wow.
mine included.
So let's talk about that merger, right? So first off, what do you approach the company? You just knock on the door, hey, I want to buy your company. What does that look like?
So one was more, you know, formal. They were listed for sale. The sellers were using a broker. And the other larger company, I approached the owner. I knew he was an older gentleman. I assumed he at some point wanted to retire. And I reached out to him, asked him if he wanted to have a conversation, and he did. And we came up with a number that worked for both of us. And,
Wow.
and just like that.
So do you call a bank and you just say, hey, I want you to finance this. This is what this looks like?
Yes, and it's not easy. With the 2 companies that we bought being condominium management companies, you're buying contracts is all you're buying. Most of the contracts were, you know, had 60, 90-day clauses. So you're buying, you know, 60-day, 90-day contracts. We were able to get some financing through a bank that we work with, but we also had to go through another company for financing because it's just not, banks don't love it.
I can imagine.
And we did some seller financing also.
But that's the beauty of it all, right? Like, have you found, how many years have you been in business?
About 17.
17. Okay. So everything is an obstacle in business, right? And I love it. And I find that the most successful people that I interview and the most successful people that I know are really great problem solvers. And really, like, they're strategists. Like, they know how to get stuff done. They have an intuition and they go about it. And this is one of the many reasons why I wanted to interview you and take you on. And by the way, you're crushing this interview, as I knew you would. Total beast. I got a lot of respect for you. So let's talk about where most entrepreneurs struggle, okay? They struggle with scaling. What is the first thing to break, Emily, when a business grows too fast? And how do you protect against that?
I'm going to go back to what you just said about intuition, because if I were to tell you how I was able to do this and take the 3, which was the scale for me at the time, to go from, you know, maybe a couple hundred condo doors to 4,000, it was intuition. And we didn't have a mentor, didn't read a book about how to get everybody together. It was 2 things. You listened
to this podcast,
well,
right?
and then exactly, and then I went after all my dreams from here. But no, I've always trusted my intuition. That's one thing, and
Good.
have never been afraid of a risk. I know that I will learn to fly on the way down if I need to. So those two things, I had enough confidence in myself. I knew it wasn't going to fail. That was just never a doubt in my mind that it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to be successful. And I always trusted my intuition with certain things, certain people, certain employees, certain systems that were already in place. And I trusted myself, as I do with everything, that I'll figure it out. I think that was the key. Those were the key ingredients to, the scale. And I never had a doubt that it would fail. I never had a plan B. I just went with it day by day. I've learned to trust myself definitely more as I go. It was intimidating for me to come from a company of, let's say, 3.5 employees to now running 40. And you assume sometimes, and I wouldn't call myself young, but I was always the younger person in the circles I was dealing with in the business. And I think I have made some assumptions at times that people that are older than me, or they have more gray hair, they must know things, or they must do things better than I do. And I think it took me a little bit of time to figure out that that's not always the case.
Yeah, that's right.
And so once I really leaned into, I got this, my gut is pretty on point, and I've gone for things and taken risks and done things that even the people within the company sometimes look at me like, you're going to do that? You're going to tell all your clients that, you no longer use a fax machine? And I'm like, yeah.
Absolutely. Somebody's got to move the needle.
Somebody's got to do it. And it's me, and I'm fine being that person. I'm happy being that person. I want to be that person. Another thing I'm realizing is let me do the things and let me focus on the things that only I can do, that are my mastery, if you will, and let everybody else do the things that they're good at. For me, it's growth, creation, thinking about new high-level ideas. I've got three initiatives I've worked on this year. And again, having started the company from the ground up and being in every single detail, it took me some work to stop in the operations a little bit. Just let it go. Trust that the people you have in place are going to run those things. That's always a work in progress. But really this year and part of last year, I got out of the day-to-day operations where I felt like I was playing defense a lot of the time, and really just focused on what are the things only I can do, where I'm the only one that can create new initiatives for this business and go after them and take the risks, right? Nobody else in my company is going to stick their neck out. And I'm good at that, and I love doing it. So that's really what I've been doing this year.
So I heard you say 3 initiatives, right? So, and that's going to lead into like company culture, right? So you're leading the company culture. You're saying, hey, we're going to cut out faxes, for example. I love that example. And you're basically making sure that your people stay to the standards in which you set, and that people enjoy where they're working, right? It's not an easy thing to do. And it's not an easy thing to keep 40 people in line, right? And I hate to say it like that, but really, like, that's what we're doing. We're managing, making sure everybody shows up, does their jobs, right? And when you hire the right people, it happens. But what are those initiatives that you put into place to keep people, showing up, excited about what they do? Because I've seen your people out there, and you got great people. Okay. And you guys have such a great, solid brand and reputation. What are those 3 initiatives you're working on?
One of them, we started earlier this year with getting more. So in the condo management business, it's very reactive. Property management in general is a very reactive business. Feels like we're constantly treading water just to stay on top of all of the reactive maintenance. There's a bigger conversation now with, in regards to legislative and insurance and proactive maintenance. It's really hard to not only handle the reactive, but also lead the property owners and the condominium boards towards proactive maintenance. And I realized that the staff I had in place and the system I had in place was built for the reactive, but I needed to go out there and find a system that would help us provide more proactive leadership. And so I went and partnered with another company. They are, condominium capital envelope project experts, essentially. And we brought them in to be that partner for us. And we've created envelope inspections for capital and common property elements of condominium associations, where myself included in this company, we talk to boards, and we really try to help them look at the big common elements and help them plan for the future, as opposed to, can you guys come over and fill that pothole and all of those things. And that's what is going to make the biggest change in not only the associations, but it's in the market, and it's about taking care of the properties and enhancing their value and all of those things. So that's one thing. I brought them in to help us do some more deeper level invasive inspections on the envelopes of all of the buildings that we manage. The second is reserve studies. Reserve studies are not mandated right now, but they will be. And so I've created a reserve study division where we're going to be able to offer that service in-house. Right now, there are a few national companies, but there's really not much in New England. So that's a service I want to be able to provide to my condo associations. And then we have, a few real estate services also that we provide. But the biggest thing, and again, this is where, what can I be doing that nobody else is really doing or that can be doing? And it's that proactive leadership through the reserve studies and through guiding associations in doing more proactive efforts.
Wow.
And having us to lean on to do that, because these condo associations are led by volunteer board members. And sometimes, it's hard to get everybody to not only just react, but proact, and we want to support them through that.
And they do a good job, but it's really hard because some of these people don't have business backgrounds.
Correct.
And they're coming in, they're volunteering with the right spirit and the right mindset, the right heart, but not always the right mindset. So I know it's a challenge working with some of these condo
And
boards.
the flip side of that is you have people that have professional backgrounds, CPAs, attorneys, but then they'll scrutinize things way more than they need to, and you have to scale them back and be like, this is really just condo
like
accounting.
that kid in gym class that just tries way too hard and he's just kicking everyone's butt and just like that. Yeah, you're taking it too serious, man. It's gym class, but
we need to bring you down to a 7. Yeah, exactly.
But what I get from you is that you're a forward thinker, and I love the fact that you were talking about the building envelope, because we sell a ton of condos, right? I've sold a ton of condos over the year, and I can't tell you the deferred maintenance in so many of these properties. And it's like, what are these property management companies doing if they're not looking after the asset? If they're not looking after everything? And the owners of the condos, right? They're not taking care of the outside. They're depending on you to do that. So that's really great. You're putting your money where your mouth is. And if I had to bet on a company's success and a company making it, I would bet that yours is going to make it, because you're already putting that out there for the years to come. And you were talking about the reserve studies. It sounds like there's going to be some legislation coming down the road. Is that federal or just state?
State.
Okay.
I believe it will spread to federal, given some of the things that have happened, in other states. It's coming, and it makes sense because, again, the boards are put into position and they have a fiduciary duty that I'm not sure sometimes they fully understand. And some of our board members have, personal agendas. A lot of them want to get on boards, keep the fees low, et cetera. But without that reserve study, you're not finding out, you're not getting all of the information that you're in charge of getting for the benefit of your community in terms of what is the community going to need in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And just because you don't go looking for the information and the data doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that's what we're driving now, is really educating these board members on the extent of their fiduciary duty. But we're not just telling them, we're explaining to them what they're responsible for, but we're also saying, and we've got this for you, and we'll lead you through the process so we can all get this done together. And what you said, about, well, what is management doing if they want to do anything above reactive? A challenge in condo management is that we really work as an extension of the boards. And so a lot of people, management, gets blamed for just about everything that goes wrong anyway.
Sure.
But we can't make decisions without the board's approval. We can come into a community and say, your roofs need to be done. You should put money into better landscaping if you want your property to look better. But ultimately, it's not our decision, and we can't spend their money. So it's like being the expert and coming in and trying to share expertise for somebody who doesn't understand and just shuts it down.
It makes it
That's
tough.
a challenge.
And you're a scapegoat.
Every time.
Yeah.
But when something goes well, it's not often.
Yeah, you don't get the
because of us.
credit for it. Why
No,
would
no.
you get the credit for that?
No,
right?
no. Yeah.
The president of the
The president of the
gets
association. It's
he showed up for the meeting minutes.
That's it.
He gets the.
That's it. But that's okay. We're okay being just we're there to
Yeah.
support. So
Right. That's good. That's good. Now let's talk about tech stack. Okay. Have you ever heard of a company called Hemlane?
no.
No, was it Hemlane? Did I say that correctly? Yeah, Hemlane. We had them on last week, and they're a tech company, and they're empowering like landlords to basically do a lot of the property management through their own tech.
Okay.
Okay, it's really interesting, the platform. It's really cool. But number one, I'm kind of curious on, outside of condos, because you also manage rental properties,
hmm
right? Okay, so what would you say to that person that wants to manage their units themselves and kind of like employ tech? Like, do you think, is that a good idea? Do you see people effectively doing that? Is there a certain type of person that should do it or shouldn't do it? I know how I think about it, right? I'm just curious your thoughts as a property management company. Like, what do you think about those self-managing type of people? Is there software you see that can handle all the day-to-days that you guys would handle?
I'll answer that in two parts. Yes, I think that they have come such a long way with good management software that
Mhm.
is user friendly and can be great for landlords to use themselves. However, I don't believe, and I understand I sell property management for a living, but I really, really don't believe that landlords should be managing their own
Mhm.
properties. No different than, if I have financial investments and mutual funds, I'm not going to manage the funds that go into or the stocks and things like that.
Mhm.
It doesn't make sense for me to do that. I think one common misconception is property owners generally believe that they have to have like hundreds of units in order to hire a property
Yeah.
management company. And there's so many smaller landlords, 20 units or less, that are trying to do it themselves. They've maybe got a full-time job, they've got something else to do, and it's really never managed well.
Mhm.
For a small percentage of the rents that you collect, to have a professional handle it, not only take care of the things the right way, but you're also eliminating that gray of, the headache, the unknowns. And I think that they would have more success with their properties in terms of an investment if it could be just that. Because when they're looking at buying a property, they're looking at the black and white,
Mhm.
they're looking at income, they're writing out expenses, and they're hoping to make a certain bottom line. What they don't factor in is you're dealing with people, you're dealing with tenants, who's going to be on call, what are you going to
That's right.
do, who's collecting rent, do you know your rights, do you know their rights? That's a whole piece that is a huge chunk of the pie that's
Mhm.
never really understood. And I've seen a lot of landlords. I actually have a friend that owned a lot of rental properties, and they'll end up selling them at some point because it just becomes a beast.
Mhm.
Whereas having the right support and management in place, you can hang on to an investment and bring it back to just that, it
Should be
being an investment.
passive, right?
Correct. Correct. And it's the quality of life. Do you want to be, mowing the lawn of your investment property on a Sunday when
I
you
don't
work
even
full time?
mow my own lawn.
Exactly. So that's what I would say. Let's bring it back to, it's an investment and treat it as such. And you'd have a fund manager, you have a property manager. Another thing I can say is, let's say you're paying 10% fee to
Mhm.
have your property managed. Most of the time, your rents are way below market anyway. So the management company can come in, give you the expertise on where your rent should be, bring them up to that, and
Mhm.
you're making money and you're
Solid
doing
point.
less. So
It's a solid,
so to
solid
answer
point.
your first question, yes, there are some great softwares, but do I think property owners should be managing their own properties? No. Even 3 units, just give it to a professional. You don't
Mhm.
have to have hundreds.
It's true. And then the other thing before you answer the second question is like me, right? Like I own rental units, but I have it managed because if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, Emilio, my kid is sick or my mom's sick or I was out of work or blah, blah, blah," like, all right, no problem. I'll let you slide on rent. Just pay me back when you got it. Like, and that would happen over and over and over. And, not everybody, but some tenants might take advantage of that. And ultimately, I know that you're going to be at a loss when you go you can't go about business that way,
Correct.
and you have to treat it as a business. So you really got to detach emotionally from these properties, and you got to let the professionals handle it. It's kind of like listing your house for sale by owner. You're going to lose money,
Correct.
and I love what you said about the rentals. I mean, you knocked the ball out of the park with that, because I know when I hire a property management company, Emily, you guys are going to get way more than I could for the rent.
Right.
You're going to advertise it everywhere. You have the pool of renters
Right.
that are looking for professionally managed properties. They're going to come in and they're going to pay a premium for that.
Right. Absolutely. And you made a great point. When you bring in management and the professional, you're adding the objective person in the middle, and therefore you don't have to be getting those calls. You don't have to be doing the negotiating and essentially losing money on your investment, because that's what happens.
What tech stack or tools are non-negotiables in your day-to-day operations? Okay. And where do you see most property managers waste money on software?
We have one really good software that is expensive, but we can't function without it. I wouldn't be able to manage as many units as I do if I didn't have that software to support it.
Yep. Is it specific to property management?
Yes.
Okay. Is it like something that other property managers could buy into? Is it like a CRM, or is it something you made?
No, I did actually, because the software is so expensive. I did at one point research creating my own software, but those prices are
crazy
exorbitant.
Money.
And because just like we're in such a subscription service culture right now that unfortunately we tie our business into these things, and we're at the mercy of price increase, right? You know, I've got 5,000 units in my software right now. If they jack up my rate, to make that change is crazy. So for that reason, we looked into building our own software, but it just didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not a tech person, and I'm not looking to get into that field. So we decided
stay
in my lane. But I would say that our software is good for management and also transparency, because we give our owners access to many things through it, and transparency being very important in our business. It's good for that too.
Nice. You know, I bounce around all over the place because I think that's what it takes to run a business. You have to be ADHD to some sense. And we're talking about like people managing their own properties, right? Like, what do you do when you have a plumbing leak or an electrical leak? Like, I don't know about you, but I have a hard time, and I'm in real estate and I have a lot of connections in real estate. I have a hard time getting a plumber out there. I have a hard time getting an electrician out there. So it's so much easier for me to go in the portal of my property management company, click a button, and have them come out and fix it. And at probably less of a cost than it would cost to get, you know, the local plumber or somebody else to come in. And then you get the transparency there. You know they're going to take care of you, and you know that they're going to do the right thing because, you know, they have to. You're their client, and they have that fiduciary responsibility to you. So that's huge. And I wanted to make that point as well too, because I think there's some people that can manage their own properties, yes, but people that want to put their money on auto drive and focus on growth should be aligned with a company that is also focused on growth and focused on solving problems. And time is our most limited resource, and we need to focus on those activities that give us as much time back as possible, right?
Absolutely. And I was just going to say that too, when I look at some of these owners that are managing the property themselves, is again, what is your time worth? Because they're not factoring that in, how much time they're putting in to managing. And another great example, and I have 4 kids, so I can relate a lot of property management to parenthood. It's, you know, even if you have a quiet month, you have a month where nobody called you, you didn't have any emergencies, you didn't know that at the start of the month that it was going to be a quiet month.
True, yeah.
And so you were sort of anticipating that entire month. So although it ended well, you didn't have peace. No different than when you put a baby down for a nap. You might get 15 minutes, you might get 2 hours, but at the end of it, you didn't do anything because you were just waiting for either them to wake up or for something to happen on your property. It's no different.
It's intense.
And so even when nothing is going on, you're anticipating a problem. Let that go, give it to management, go on vacation and be on vacation and not have to worry about having your phone on in the middle of the night for a plumbing leak. It's a time value factor. That's
right. And my next question was actually going to ask you, I was going to say you have 4 kids, you're a CEO, okay? How do you set boundaries while maintaining high performance in both roles? The work-life balance.
So that doesn't exist.
Agreed.
And I always knew that I lived in extremes most of my life. healthy ones, not anything too crazy. But I realized really not that long ago that that's actually my superpower, because if I lived a balanced life, I wouldn't have bought 2 companies at once, and I wouldn't go from 1,000 to 5,000 units, right? I'd probably just be content with a few hundred, which again, to each their own with how much they want to take on and how much they want to manage, but there is no work-life balance. I'm basically always working a little bit, and I'm just always parenting. It's all one. It's my life.
There's no rest.
There's no rest. I have gotten better, again, once I can let go mentally of trying to control certain things. I do open up some headspace there, but I think that when you own a business, you have to give up the idea of balance.
Agreed. It's not, you can't just shut it off at the end of the day. You're responsible.
Correct.
But isn't that the fun of it?
Absolutely.
Right. That's the best part, I think. And
Yeah.
it's like, and on the same token, right? If you want to go away for a week, you got a team in place that can happen.
Correct. I can shut my phone off for I finally, and it really has taken me some time to get there, but I could turn my phone off for 1 week and I would.
Do you?
No, because the kids still need me. But I could get a work phone. I could get a work phone and completely shut that off. And I have full trust that the people that I have in place will handle it. They'll let me know if they need me. But again, that just allows me to focus on the new things, the creation, the new ideas, as opposed to having to just always be there to catch or play defense or do something that I've put the people in place for to do.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. The people, the systems. Very good. So leadership today often demands emotional intelligence. And I feel like this is a great time to talk about this. How do you foster trust and resilience in your organization, especially during challenging seasons?
We have weekly meetings with all of our managers that I want to sit on and just, hear the challenges. I think I want to be accessible to a degree where they can trust me. I want them to, I know sometimes I go after big things and I take big leaps and I can be a little bit bold, but I want to, be there to kind of talk some of the things out with them and have them see that, it works, and have them see me explain it with my passion, when I have a brand new idea and I'm sitting there and they're all looking at me like, oh my gosh, she's going to do this. But just feel the passion and know that it's going to work out. And again, the record has shown that we've continued to grow and grow in many ways since the acquisition of the company. So I think the original employees that we acquired have seen that now. And it takes some time, to trust a brand new person that walks in and is now your leader. But that's been proven, and they have an understanding of how I do things and how I run things, and they know that I stand for, growth and just transparency and all of those things, and they're along for the ride. And I want them to be excited. I want them to be happy and excited to be with my company, because it's important to me that they're with me.
I'm sure that they are. I mean, you guys are doing such big things. I love it. One piece of advice that you would give, I want to end off on this. One piece of advice that you would give anybody starting a business. Like, look back at yourself 17 years ago. Okay. And it's hard to imagine looking back then and thinking about what you've built now, right? There's so much that went into it. One piece of advice for that person starting a business that needs some inspiration, needs a slap of reality, needs something, what would you tell them?
Somebody told me a long time ago in kind of a business conversation that stuck is you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And I observe a lot of things. I like to see how things are getting done. I'm always here and I have my own opinion, but I'm always open to kind of observing and seeing. And I think it's important sometimes to kind of remain a little more quiet but observant. That was a big one for me, and I've always done that. But also, don't delay the inevitable. You know in your gut when you've got to make a move, make a change, when something's right or when something's wrong. And I think putting that off just never serves. So I would, if I could react quicker going back, I would.
Sweet.
But
dive right in.
Just do it.
Great. 2 fantastic answers. Awesome interview. Amelie Hennessy of the Hennessy Group. If you're not following her on social media, make sure that you do. You can easily find her. Google Amelie Hennessy at the the Hennessy Group, and she'll pop up, and just follow them on Instagram. They're doing some really amazing things. Emily, thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good stuff. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with our next guest on The Wealth Architect. Do you own a European or a Japanese car? Are you looking for a reliable, trustworthy, experienced place to take your car to get repaired? Look no further than our friends over at Elite Auto. They're not only going to welcome you with a smile into their ultra clean facility, they're also going to give you a rental and make sure that you are taken care of while your car is being repaired. They've got master technicians that know how to diagnose and fix any problem your car has. Elite Auto, building relationships for the road ahead. Episode 14, segment 2. We've got such a fantastic guest today with us, and we're talking about building a business on relationships. Look, there is no one better to talk about this than my friend Gretchen Coley over in Raleigh, North Carolina with Compass. She's also involved in Realm Global as well, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes. It's an affiliation that we both have, a wonderful one at that. And she runs the #1 Compass team in the Triangle with over 2,400 transactions and 1.5 billion in closed transactions. That's a billion with a B, okay? Normally, like, a whole county doesn't do that much business. So that's pretty unbelievable. And she builds it all through relationships. Gretchen, welcome to The Wealth Architect.
Thank you so much for having me.